this video, we're going to drive home two fundamental concepts. The first one is ID, must be unique. And we're going to drive that home in other videos as well. And the concept of a root object. There can be only one. So what are we really talking about here? Well, I've got a window. I've already given it an ID called root. That's its identifier. Remember, this must be unique. Let's make an image. And I'm going to call this root as well. Uh-oh, notice duplicate ID, M15 error. Let's try to run this. Well, it builds, but no window pops up. But application output is flashing. Let's go into app output. Here we go. QML application engine failed to load component. That's pretty much the de facto standard. Hey, something bad happened. And then it gives us the actual file with the line and it says ID is not unique. And we can click that, boom, and it takes us right to it. The problem is it doesn't highlight the original ID, so we don't really know. We can just simply change this to something else. Let's give this a build. Notice it's going to build regardless, and let's go ahead and try and run this. And it runs. Notice how our source is just simply file, but it didn't give us any real issues. It didn't not compile, it didn't not run, it didn't fail, it just gave us this obscure little message, QML image cannot open, blah blah. So let's fix that. That's one of my pet peeves about QMLs. It has a lot of silent errors, and sometimes you'll run your app and it doesn't really work the way you thought it would, and you have to go digging through the app output to figure out what's going on. So, what's happening under the hood here is we have a parent-child hierarchy. So we have window is the parent, image is the child, and we could even take this a step further. And let's say width 150, height, and let's call this 100, and let's make a rectangle. Rectangle is kind of a fundamental object in QML. A lot of tutorials actually start with the rectangle. And we're just going to set the color. Don't expect that you're an expert in the window, the image, or the rectangle. I'm just demonstrating we have a parent-child hierarchy here. And then we're going to say width and parent.width. And then height equal parent.height. So instantly we can see, whoa, wait a minute, hold the phone. This is way, way, way different than cute widgets. We actually can do property bindings. So we are binding the width of this rectangle to its parent's width. That is extremely cool. Now let's play around with the opacity real quick. And let's say 0.5, which really stands for 50%. So a 0.0 is nothing, and a 1.0 is 100%. Save and run. Let's see what this looks like. Very cool. So now we have an image with a rectangle inside of it. Let's go ahead and drop an anchor in here. Run this again. All right, now we notice some things going on here. This image is centered in the window. The rectangle, however, is centered here. Is it really centered? No, it's really not. It's got the width and the height. If we were to say, let's actually grab him. And let's make this a height of 50. And just run this. Now you see what I mean. It's not really centered, or it would have pushed it down automatically. It doesn't have an anchor. So anchors are not cascading down, but it knows it has a parent. Interesting to play around with some of this stuff. Let's go ahead and go in here, kill our app. So our IDs, we know those have to be unique. And let's talk about the root object now. This is the root object. How do I know? Because it's the top level object. And there can only be one root object. Let's demonstrate that. If we take this rectangle and put it here, This now becomes the root object because it's on top, and we now have a problem. Syntax error creates a new top level window. This thing thinks it wants to be root, but this is root, and it knows it can only be one. If we go to build it, notice there's no compilation failure. Let's try to run it. Application output, syntax error. Not super helpful what's going on, but it just tells us, hey, there's an issue here. And if you hit F1, it's not super helpful. So that's one of the little caveats you really got to be aware of, is there can only be one. Now let's talk about why can there only be one. It's the way Qt does memory management. If you understand Qt Core, which you should if you're taking this course, Qt uses what's called a parent-child hierarchy to manage memory. So when the parent is destroyed, all subsequent children are destroyed also. So it only has to track one object. If we go back into our C++ file, you can see that the engine here is loading the URL. So when it's loading this up, it's scanning and saying, what's my first object? The top level object is the root. Therefore, when I destroy this, everything else gets destroyed with it. So when it loads the file, there is a huge object tree that's created, and that's what the engine really does, is loads all these objects into memory. But following Qt's memory management, they all say, okay, this has a pointer to this has a pointer to that, so when this is destroyed, the whole tree is destroyed with it automatically. It's actually pretty elegant. So the big takeaways from this is IDs. You can have an ID, and every ID must be unique, and you can only have one root object, which is the top level object. But you can have as many children as you want.